Would you not describe that as an aggressive activity, a show of force?
I'm glad you mentioned this because actually this kind of sailing by Chinese Navy would provide you a chance of soul-searching of what you have done to China. Yeah, if that makes you to think, I think that is good for you.
It's not very friendly, is it, to show up and do live fire exercises? Why wouldn't China warn us?
Well, is it friendly that you have sent aircraft and ships so close to China? Yeah, to make all these provocations? Who did it first?
大家好，我是小懒。今天咱们来看个有意思的视频。这个视频是澳媒搞的。他们先是跑去汤加采访，想挖点中国的坏话，看看能不能找到什么中国威胁的证据。结果没挖到，人家汤加官员根本就不吃他们那一套，反而夸中国实在。这下这个澳媒可就尴尬了，没辙了，又开始炒作老掉牙的中国威胁论了。咱们来先看看这第一段澳媒在汤加都问了些啥，又得到了啥样的回答。
Retired Colonel Siamelie Latu was Tonga's ambassador to China for 5 years. Now, he's Secretary General for the Tonga-China Friendship Association. And are there strings attached to that?
There's no string attached at all. It's a free will, it's an unconditional love.
Unsurprisingly, Siamelie has only praise for his nation's close ties to Beijing. How would you describe Tonga's relationship with China? It's more than just a friendship, isn't it?
It's more like brothers and sisters. What I mean by that is that Tonga and China, they have something in common. Chinese culture is almost similar in a sense to Tongan culture.
Traditionally, Tonga's allies and partners were America, Australia. What happened? What changed?
To be frank about it, because the West dropped the ball and China picks up the loose ball.
Do you feel you have to pick a side between China and the West?
We don't have to pick side. We are friends of all, enemy to none. However, we secretly know who to make friends to,
Lord Whakawhenua is a member of the royal family and the Speaker of Tonga's parliament. It's a role that requires considerable diplomacy, which is perhaps why he says Tonga must embrace both China and the West. How would you characterise Tonga's relationship with Australia?
I would say our relationship is one similar to that on the football field. We have a friendly rivalry, but it's one based on mutual respect and understanding, and Australia has a pivotal role to play as a regional power in the Pacific, and they have always been there for us in Tonga.
Walking around the streets of Tonga, it seems like Australia perhaps hasn't been there enough.
I wouldn't say China and Australia are competing as per se. It's not a zero-sum game. A lot of Chinese have migrated into Tonga and they've become Tongan citizens. And interestingly enough, if you go to the stores, a lot of them only speak Mandarin and Tongan, not even English. And so we find that there's a lot of similarity between our two cultures.
Are there strings attached to China's money?
No. There's no string attached. That's Chinese policy.
But isn't Beijing buying the loyalty of the Tongan people, buying influence here?
But they're not buying loyalty, they treat people the same. Even big country or small country, they treat us all the same.
If he has enough infrastructure and influence in this region, he can do whatever he wants, can't he?
I don't think so. I think as part of Chinese policy is to respect our sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you trust that?
I trust it.
I think it's important because we're talking about winning the hearts and minds of everyday people. That is something that transcends geopolitics. It's something that both Australian people and Tongan people love equally.
But Lord Whakawhenua says Australia still has a long way to go.
The diplomatic relations that I've personally experienced with Beijing is they have a very long-term, measured approach and forge lasting relationships.
Do they play a long game?
They do play a long game. They play a very long game.
怎么样？看完是不是觉得澳美有点尴尬呀？竭力抹黑中国啊，奈何人家就是不配合，人家汤家又不傻，谁对他们好，谁真心实意的帮忙，人家心里清楚的很呀。这澳美啊，想引导人家说中国的坏话，结果人家直接一句我们跟中国是真心实意的，就把他们的算盘给打翻了。这不就是一次活生生的抹黑失败的例子吗？但是啊，这个澳美啊，他可不甘心啊，他们造谣抹黑那可是出了名的。哎，心里想，这汤家说好话没关系啊，我们还能从其他方面下手。于是啊，他们又找了一位中国学者周波。这个周先生的来头也不小哦，他是清华大学战略与安全研究中心研究员，还是个退役的解放军上校。这下话题就更加尖锐了啊，直接开始聊中国的军事威胁。咱们接着往下面看。
And as you'll see, China is in it to win it. Coming up, a dire warning to Australia.
You don't have enough aircraft. You don't have enough ships.
导弹指挥正常，左满舵。
You would lose.
When it comes to China's military and strategic ambitions, few people have more knowledge and experience than former Colonel Zhou Bo. After more than 3 decades serving with China's People's Liberation Army, or PLA, Zhou Bo is eager to defend his nation's massive military build-up and acts of aggression in our region. China has undertaken the most rapid military expansion of any country since World War II. Can you understand why that is a threat to a country like Australia?
No, I don't think I don't think you're right at all on this point, because I would argue in a different way that China's rise has been unprecedentedly peaceful. Actually, it's a miracle in human history.
Why does China need the largest navy in the world if its intention is peace?
China's intention is not a secret, because we have made it quite clear that we want to build a world-class military. Being strong doesn't mean that you have to be a hegemon. And this is not the case. There is no proof that China is, becoming a hegemon.
There is, in fact, plenty of proof that Beijing wants regional dominance, combining its vast resources with soft diplomacy across the Pacific to embed Chinese dependency, as we saw in the small island nation of Tonga. But Zhou Bo insists it's simply good business. Isn't the end game for Beijing security agreements? Military alliances?
Not at all. For example, with all these Chinese projects, China, of course, will become influential, right? Yeah, that is for sure. But that does not mean that you are going to establish a sphere influence. Then you would seek alliance. Then you would have allies. Then you behave like the United States. Yeah, and having an allies altogether sometimes sounds good, but actually it's a difficult job. Herding the cats is never easy. So why should China bother with establishing spheres of influence if it is already influential around the world?
So China doesn't need those smaller allies?
I don't think China needs any allies.
It's been described as the most challenging strategic environment we've seen in about 80 years.
Chief of the Royal Australian Navy, Vice Admiral Mark Hammond, is all too aware of the growing threat as China's Navy expands and intimidates. Do you think they're preparing for war?
Governments don't invest billions of dollars into military capabilities for no reason at all. And the same is true of us. The Australian government has committed to doubling the size of our surface combatant force and transforming our submarine capability because our assessment of the strategic environment is that this is a worthwhile investment in the national interest, and alongside our allies and partners, our collective maritime capabilities need to be able to deliver what we call a deterrent effect.
Is that another way of saying we're not quite up to scratch at the moment?
So I would put it this way, Amelia. My job as the Chief of the Navy is to not rely upon a strategy of hope. My job is to be a pessimist and to try and see the world for what it is, not what I would wish it to be. So my reflex to that responsibility is to assume that things will get worse, not better. and to ensure that the Royal Australian Navy is prepared in all respects for any challenge which may come our way within the resources allocated. Brilliant. Straight inside? Yes, sir.
The chief is keen to show us they're well on their way. Today, we're on the guided missile destroyer HMAS Brisbane, which has just had a considerable upgrade.
When Brisbane goes to sea again, she will be fitted for and capable of firing the Naval Strike Missile, which is one of the most capable anti-ship missiles available right now. And then in late last year, the Tomahawk land attack missile firing conducted by this very ship. So within 18 months, we've transformed a very capable surface combatant into one of the most modern and lethal surface combatants I think we've ever operated.
While the unannounced appearance of a Chinese flotilla in Australian waters back in February has put our Navy on edge, incredibly, former PLA Colonel Joe Bo says it served us right. Would you not describe that as an aggressive activity, a show of force?
I'm glad you mentioned this because actually this kind of sailing by Chinese Navy would provide to you a chance of soul-searching of what you have done to China. Yeah, if that makes you to think, I think that is good for you.
He's referring to the Australian Navy's operations in the South China Sea, sailing through the Strait to promote freedom of navigation, which Beijing sees as a provocation. So was that retaliation?
Well, I think it's not a kind of retaliation, but it shows you, first of all, if you are talking about a law, Chinese ships also have rights to do freedom of navigation. But if you do not like this concept, then think of what you have done to China. Yeah, and then think about what China has done to you. This is fair.
It's not very friendly, is it, to show up and do live fire exercises? Why wouldn't China warn us?
Well, is it friendly that you have sent aircraft and ships so close to China? Yeah, to make all these provocations? Who did it first? Do not do unto others what you would not do to yourself, right? Historically speaking, you are always fighting other people's war, right? Be it in Gallipoli, be it in Afghanistan, yeah, or even during the Second World War, you're always fighting other people's wars. Why should you always fight other people? Why would you always follow other people's footprint?
Australia has a proud history of defending democracy, and Vice Admiral Hammond says that's not about to change. While he hopes he'll never see his Navy's training and preparedness put to the test in the theatre of war, China's ambitions couldn't be any clearer. The PRO is now routinely rehearsing a blockade of the practicing hitting key ports and energy infrastructure.
I'm all in on diplomacy. I'm all in on deterrence. But I have to be all in on defence of our nation. And that begins with an assumption that despite everybody's best efforts, we find ourselves in a conflict. Okay, and there are 1,000 ways to start a conflict. There's only 2 ways that it ends. And they are, in my view, you lose the national willpower to continue the fight, or you lose the economic ability to continue the fight.
Joe Bo claims that China only wants peace and prosperity, as long as it's on Beijing's terms. And should tensions in the lead to war, he has a grim warning for Australia. If that conflict that we've been discussing were to eventuate, who would win?
You would lose, definitely. You don't have enough aircraft, you don't have enough ships, and our military is growing by leaps and bounds. And we are fighting our home turf, and we are determined to safeguard China's sovereignty. On that, you can imagine our soldiers would be brave, and our weapons would be lethal.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Hopefully, yeah.
你看这个周先生这几句话有理有据，又不是幽默风趣，直接把澳媒那些带着偏见和怀疑的问题都给怼了回去，让他们自己都觉得没趣。 他这番回应啊，真是既维护了中国的形象，又展现了大国应有的自信和格局。哎呦，听着就让人扬眉吐气啊！这澳媒啊，想在他这儿挖坑啊，结果自己反倒掉了进去啊，真是活该哦。其实这澳媒啊，他也不是一天两天这样看不惯中国了。哎，你想想啊，他隔三差五就想整出点关于中国的负面新闻，又是说中国渗透啦，又是说中国威胁啦。这次啊，更是直接从南太平洋小岛国入手，再扯上军事威胁啊，这背后啊，说白了还是那点事啊。你想啊，这个澳大利亚他自己觉得他是西方阵营的一份子，跟这个美国啦、英国那些国家的关系啊铁得很。哎呦，就看到这个中国啊现在崛起的这么快，那心里啊多少有点不是滋味啊，觉得自己的话语权好像变小了。而且啊，中国在南太平洋这边的影响力真是越来越大了，又是搞基建，又是给援助的，这不就让这个澳大利亚感觉自己的后院好像有点被别人插足了嘛。说白了，这澳媒啊，他一次次的抹黑中国啊，很大程度上就是因为它背后啊，代表着一部分澳大利亚人的焦虑感和不适应。他们看着中国越来越强，在国际舞台上啊越来越有分量，可能就觉得自己的传统地位啊受到了挑战，所以啊他就想方设法的找中国的茬儿，希望能给中国泼点脏水，好像这样啊就让他们心里面舒服一点。说到底啊，这就是一种心态问题啊，咱们看看就好。中国做好自己的事情才是最关键的，时间啊会证明一切嘛。中国这些年在国际上的形象和影响力啊，也不是别人说几句坏话就能抹杀掉的，实实在在的合作，看得见的成果，那才是硬道理。好了，今天就给大家聊到这儿了，我是小懒，我们下期再见。